All right, so imagine this. You're at a company, right, on the edge of like this major breakthrough. They've got this game-changing idea, could be huge, but, and this is the crazy part, they just toss it aside.
Oh, why would they do that?
Because, get this, the idea, it came from outside the company.
Ah, I see. Yeah, that not invented here thing.
Bingo. NIH syndrome. And it's way more common than you'd think, which is what makes this deep dive so fascinating. We're looking at this MIT Sloan Management Review article, fall 2024 issue, called, get this, Beating Not Invented Here Syndrome.
Catchy title. Gets right to the point.
Right. So the author, Rolf Christian Wentz.
Oh, yeah. I've read some of his stuff.
He's done a lot of research in this area, and he found that a seriously ridiculous 84% of innovation projects, they're all affected by this we know best kind of thinking.
84%? That's nuts.
Right. It's like companies, some of them, are their own worst enemy when it comes to, actually innovating.
It's true. And, when you really think about the economic impact of that, missed opportunities, companies not growing because they're rejecting good ideas just because of, where they come from. It's wild.
Okay, so we've established this whole NIH thing. It's a big deal. But why does it happen? What is it about these companies that make them resistant? So resistant to outside ideas?
Well, the author, Wentz, he kind of boils it down to two main culprits, the doubters and the resistors. The doubters, those are the ones who, they approach everything from the outside, any external idea, with let's just say a healthy dose of skepticism.
So always looking for a reason why something won't work rather than being open to, the possibility it might.
Exactly. And then you've got your resistors, and these are the folks who are just, quote, they're opposed to anything that wasn't created within, their team, their department, their bubble. Not even just skeptical. Sometimes it's like almost hostile to these outside ideas.
And that's where the real damage is, right? Because it's one thing to be cautious, but being straight up hostile to innovation, that's a recipe for disaster, I'd say. So we've got these doubters and resistors, right, lurking around every corner, just waiting to squash innovation. But surely it can't be all doom and gloom, right? There's got to be a way to, break through this NIH barrier.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, Wentz, the author, he gives us some really, actually practical strategies for overcoming this NIH syndrome. He breaks it down into two main approaches: incentivizing the doubters and, get this, pushing the resistors.
Pushing. That sounds a little, aggressive maybe? But hey, I'm intrigued. Let's start with the doubters, though. How do you incentivize someone to be more, open-minded?
Well, just think about it. Everyone likes to be recognized for their contributions, right? Most people, they're motivated by, the possibility of growing in their career, moving up the ladder, all that. So really, companies can and should tap into that, those natural desires to, try to encourage a more open and innovative culture.
So it's about aligning those incentives with the behavior you want to see. Instead of just saying, be more open-minded, you actually show people how embracing those outside ideas can benefit them.
Exactly. And Wentz actually gives this great example. Huawei.
It's a tech company.
Yeah, so they've gone ahead and directly linked employee performance reviews, like their actual evaluations, to the outcomes of their open innovation efforts.
Whoa. So if you're like an engineer at Huawei, being receptive to outside ideas isn't just a suggestion, it's tied to your success at the company.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just performance reviews, too. Take Johnson & Johnson, for example. They actually reward their scientists for, staying current on external research in their fields. They're actively encouraging their people to, look outside those company walls to stay on the cutting edge.
Which makes sense. The last thing you want is people stuck in their own little world thinking they've got all the answers. It's about building a culture of, continuous learning. Recognizing that, hey, the best ideas, they can come from anywhere.
Right. And by connecting that behavior, being open to outside ideas with recognition and rewards, companies, they can create this really powerful incentive for even the most, shall we say, skeptical employees to open up a bit.
Okay, so we've got some good strategies for the doubters. I like it. But I'm still stuck on this whole pushing the resistors thing. How do you even begin to change the mind of someone who is just, dead set against any idea that wasn't theirs?
Yeah.
It's trying to get a kid to eat their vegetables. They've already decided they hate them,
It's a good analogy. And yeah, you're right. You're probably not going to change those deeply held beliefs, those biases overnight. But there's something interesting Wentz talks about, this idea that you can change behavior first, and then hopefully the mindset, it follows. He's a big proponent of structured processes, things that kind of force people, even if it's subconsciously, to, at least engage with these external ideas.
So instead of just crossing your fingers and hoping that people will magically become more open-minded, you bake it into the way they work. I like it.
Exactly. And one model he talks about, I think you'll find it interesting, it's called the adopt, adapt, create model. And what's neat is that it really flips the typical, brainstorming innovation process on its head.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. How does it work?
So picture this. Instead of defaulting to, all right, team, let's brainstorm, let's come up with something new, this approach forces teams to look externally first. Can we just straight up adopt a solution that's already out there? Is there something we can adapt to our needs? And only after exhausting those avenues, then we move on to creating something totally from scratch.
I love that. Hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Or better yet, if someone else already fixed it, let's just, use that solution.
Right. And the cool thing is, it's not just theoretical. Companies are actually doing this. Wentz talks about Procter & Gamble, of all companies. They've actually restructured their entire R&D process, and they prioritize finding these external solutions first before even thinking about internal development. They've basically, it seems like anyway, made this outward-looking approach. They've made it part of their DNA.
That's smart. So, we've got incentives for the doubters, we've got these process shifts for the resistors, but Wentz also goes a bit bigger picture, right? He talks about job rotation, even.
It's fascinating, right? He makes this case that simply shaking things up within a company, just getting people out of their routines, it can be huge for fighting this NIH syndrome, exposing people to new environments, new teams. I've even heard of companies sending people to different countries, all to kind of break down those biases that feed into that not invented here mentality.
It's like, what's that old saying? Travel broadens the mind, or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And he gives this cool example with BMW. Apparently, they have a program where they ship a whole team of engineers out to their tech office in California. And it's not just a vacation, right? They're immersed in this whole different setting. They're around all these external experts. And it's designed to, encourage them to see things from a new perspective.
So it's not enough to just tell people, hey, be more open-minded. You have to actually create those opportunities for them to experience the value of outside ideas firsthand.
100%. And it got me thinking, how does this apply to our listeners, to their careers, their teams, right? Have you ever thought about asking for a temporary assignment in a different department? Or maybe cross-training in something you're not already an expert in? These experiences, they might seem small, but they can be so valuable, both personally and professionally.
It's so true. Sometimes all it takes is a little change of scenery to spark that new idea or, help you break out of that invented here rut.
Absolutely. I think if there's one big takeaway from all this, it's that conquering this not invented here syndrome, it's not about finding that one magic bullet. It's more about, shifting to a mindset of curiosity, always being open to learning, and just being open to the fact that sometimes the best ideas, they're already out there.
So to wrap up our deep dive today, the key takeaway here, if you ask me, is that we can overcome not invented here. We don't have to be held back by it. But it takes conscious effort, a commitment to being open-minded, the awareness that good ideas can come from anywhere. Sometimes the most innovative thing you can do is knowing when to embrace a solution someone else already discovered.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Sometimes the best invention is realizing you don't have to invent anything at all. You just have to be open to what's already out there.
And on that note, that wraps up our deep dive into dismantling the not invented here syndrome. We'll see you next time, but until then, keep those minds open and keep innovating.